There will be a question and answer period, by the way, after the last speaker.
You said no, but I'm going to leave it to the audience to decide. If you're tired and you want to stretch for a second, please. I won't be offended. No? Okay. Merci beaucoup de m'avoir invité aujourd'hui. J'aimerais clarifier quelque chose avant de commencer. Moi, j'ai une opinion très différente des autres de la famille. Moi, je crois que toutes les religions sont fondamentalement bonnes, mais je ne supporte pas aussi l'extrémisme. Je crois à l'importance de la foi et la spiritualité, mais en même temps, je crois en la stricte séparation entre l'Église et l'État. Donc, lorsqu'on parle du défi de l'islamisme, when we talk of the challenge of Islamism, I would like to clarify that I'm talking about political Islam, not using Islam solely as a religion, but also as a political system that governs the legal, economic, and social imperatives of the state. So I'll mostly be using a case study to show the examples of how I see Islamism causing a challenge to countries like Iran, especially the women, because of the rules that they're under, namely Sharia law, the Islamic-based law, which has embedded discrimination directly within. I'm going to be talking about the story of Nazanin Mahabbad Fatehi. We've heard a little bit from thereabouts. Nazanin Mahabbad Fatehi is a young Kurdish Iranian girl in Iran. She's 18 now. She's awaiting prison. She's been there for the last year and a half. She comes from an extremely poor family, 6, 7 children. She's had to take care of these kids while the mother goes and gains an income for the family. The father's been ill for the last 10 years. So she's the main player in the family. Last year, in March, Nazanin was with her 16-year-old niece in a park when 3 men attempted to rape them. They screamed for help. No one came to their aid. And out of self-defense, she stabbed one of the men who ended up dying in hospital later. Nazanin didn't wake up that morning thinking, I want to kill someone today. So instead of being treated as a victim of attempted rape, or a hero for having protected her honor and chastity, or that of her niece, she was condemned to death by hanging. Here's where I'll start to explain some of the injustices under Sharia law. Under Sharia, it's very difficult for a woman's word to be taken seriously. In the case of Nazanin, she would have needed 4 male witnesses to basically legitimize her word. How likely is it that you would have 4 males there at the time you're going to get raped, unless they're part of, the action? If the situation was reversed, had the man killed Nazanin, there would have been no way he could have gotten the same sentence. Because under Sharia, a life of a woman is worth half that of a man. So literally, he would have had to kill 2 women to get the same sentence. The injustice doesn't end there. Had Nazanin allowed the rape to take place, she could have been charged with acts incompatible with chastity, which means that she would have probably gotten a sentence of 100 lashes. Or had she been married, she could have been charged with adultery, and that would have meant she would be stoned to death. Now, for those of you who don't know, most hangings and stonings are made public. Hangings, there's usually huge industrial cranes with when the person's hung by a noose, and the crane slowly moves up. It's not one of those quick and painless deaths where your neck is snapped and you're dead. This is slow. They try to do this, to enforce as much pain as possible. Stoning, you're buried in sand, and people take turns throwing stones at you. Now, the stones can't be too big so that you're killed right away, because that's the rule under Sharia, and they can't be too small that they're not considered a stone. So there's very specific rules. Now, also keep in mind that Nazanin was 17 at the time when this offense took place, and under UN international conventions, namely the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the Convention on the Rights of the Child, it states that state parties are obliged not to execute anyone under the age of 18. Iran is signatory to these treaties, and yet they continue to do these things. Since 2005 alone, there's been 9 executions of minors, and the rates are going up with the new president in power. What they do is that they interpret these laws in their own way. They use Sharia as the ultimate law. And under Sharia, it says that girls are adults at age 9, and men or boys are adults at age 15. So they wait until the person turns 18 and then they decide to execute them, even if they committed a crime before that time. Can you imagine a 9-year-old being considered an adult? A lot of these 9-year-olds are forced to marry 60-year-old men. These abuses are wrong, and these are the abuses that must end. So what are the responses to the Islamist challenge? What can we do? I have learned that the best way is by being vocal and it's being active. Many people question me. They say, if Iran doesn't even budge on the nuclear question, why would they care about a young Kurdish poor girl from the suburbs? What can we possibly do? And the answer is we can do something because, based on past experience, we have seen that through international pressure, people's lives are saved. We can't take a defeatist attitude and say, well, it's somebody else's ordeal or that nothing can be done, because we've been proven wrong. It's these small changes that build and potentially save lives. When I first heard about the story of Nazanin, I was shocked, obviously because of the injustices, but also because the gentleman who first told me about the story had also tried to get journalists to print this story in their papers and display it in the news stations. But they said it wasn't newsworthy enough. This happens too often. This is not new. So then, as an individual, what do? Fine, I'm gonna try. And so I decided to take matters into my own hands. And I had no idea where to begin, but I started a petition. And I had no idea that now, months later, we've collected over 220,000 signatures from around the world. And through a lot of campaigning, getting different women's rights groups on board, human rights groups, finally CNN, BBC, CBC, Global, CTV, all of the different, international news stations, newspapers, the Middle East Times, the Sydney Morning Herald, all of them decided to finally put it in their news. So you have to build small. When these different news stations took note of the case, then obviously more signatures and more clout and strength behind the numbers. I got Tamina Ahadi, the international head of the International Committee Against Execution, on board, and together we lobbied the Canadian Parliament. We got full party solidarity. They brought the questions forward in the question period. We had a big press conference in the House of Commons, and behind me, one member of political party stood in solidarity. There was Belinda Strong from the Liberals, Royal Galipo from the Conservative, Caroline Saint-Hilaire from NDP, and Alexis McDonough from the NDP, and Caroline Saint-Hilaire from the Bloc Québécois. And they came up to me after they said, thank you for doing this. This is the first time we've all stood in line over an issue together.